Israel is ramping up attacks against Hamas, and President Biden orders new strikes against Iranian-backed groups after they attacked U.S. troops. Joining us live is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What's the latest with Israel, and what's the White House's response?
Good evening to you as well. President Biden this morning was briefed about the latest developments in Israel and Gaza. And Israel today announced that it's now expanding its ground operations in Gaza as it prepares for the next stages of its war against Hamas. And the escalating situation also comes as the Pentagon announced that it's now sending about 900 U.S. troops to the Middle East after Iranian-linked militias attacked U.S. bases in the region. And President Biden on Thursday also announced that it's now ordering airstrikes against Iranian-linked targets in Syria. And this is what the administration said just hours before the strikes were announced. Watch.
And as the president said, we will not hesitate to protect our troops and our facilities, but we're going to do it at a time of our choosing, in a manner of our choosing. And the decision to do it, if we do it, is his as commander-in-chief and his alone.
And amid all this, President Biden today also met with China's top diplomat Wang Yi at the White House amid tense U.S.-China relations. The White House says President Biden emphasized the need for both countries to responsibly manage its relationship and competition and maintain open lines of communication. And just this week, Biden vowed to compete with China. Watch.
China is having their own internal and external difficulties right now. We're going to compete with China on every way according to the international rules, economically, politically, and other ways. But I'm not looking for conflict.
And this meeting today is also seen as another step to prepare for a potential meeting between President Biden and China's Xi Jinping in November. But no announcement has been made just yet. Back to you.
Thank you, Iris, reporting for us from the White House. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is outlining his China policy today at the Heritage Foundation. The GOP presidential candidate highlighted the importance of protecting America from the looming threat of the Chinese Communist Party. Take a listen to what the Florida governor had to say.
The threat posed by the CCP requires our primary focus and attention right now. Our goal from a national security perspective vis-a-vis the CCP is very simple. We win and they lose.
During a speech, he said that China is bolstering Iran and Russia through financial support amid the ongoing warfare in the Middle East and Ukraine. And the end goal is to distract the U.S. with lengthy geopolitical conflicts and ultimately deplete its weapons stockpile. On the military front, the governor proposed an expansion of the U.S. Navy's fleet with an additional 600 warships within the next 2 decades. DeSantis also promised to make it easier for Taiwan to purchase advanced weapons. On the issue of supply chains, the presidential candidate said he'd counter China by pushing for more domestic mining and production of rare earth minerals. These are essential components of advanced technologies. Worth noting, this wasn't the first time DeSantis took jabs at China. Earlier this year, the Sunshine State enacted a series of laws restricting Chinese nationals from purchasing land near critical infrastructures and military bases. And another Democrat now officially running for president. Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips is President Biden's newest competitor. He says he's campaigning because he doesn't believe Biden can win in 2024.
It appears the president, Joe Biden, is going to lose the next election. The numbers are horrific. And if you're a Democratic voter and you care about 2024, it matters. And the absence of any competition, any alternative, is antithetical to democracy. And I think it's important that Americans have choices at a time like this. I love the president. I voted for his policies. I'm a Democrat. I support our policies and will continue to do so with new twists, with new approaches, and new visions.
In addition, Phillips says Democrats need younger candidates and must prevent former President Trump from getting reelected. Phillips is one of the wealthiest members of Congress. His official entry into the race comes after months of speculation. But experts say he has little chance of winning the Democrat nomination, as he's relatively unknown nationally, and on top of that, he's already missed the deadline to enter the primary race in Nevada. As one candidate enters the race, another one ends his campaign. Republican presidential candidate Larry Elder today announcing he's no longer running. Elder is now endorsing former President Trump in his bid. Elder says it's time for Republicans to unite behind Trump. And more charges against Congressman George Santos from New York. The charges allege he stole donors' identities, also that he ran up thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges on their credit cards and more. The Republican representative from Long Island, New York, appeared at a federal court in D.C. today. He pleaded not guilty to all charges against him. The judge set a trial date for next September, but the judge turned down a request by prosecutors to have the trial as soon as May. Santos could face a lengthy prison term if convicted, but right now he's free on bail while he awaits his trial. The court appearance came the morning after some of his Republican colleagues launched an effort to expel him from Congress. Back in May, Santos pleaded not guilty to 13 federal charges. They included wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and false statements to the U.S. House of Representatives. Does Google exert an anti-Semitic influence over searches? Watchdog Media Research Center has made a curious discovery about the answers given by the big tech giant's AI chatbot when asked about Israel and the Hamas terrorist group. All right, joining me now is Dan Schneider, who's the Vice President of MRC's Free Speech America. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time today.
Happy to be with you.
We're going to talk about the chatbot Bard. You had some interesting interactions with it, and just explain to us what exactly happened with Google's AI Bard.
Right, so Google has an AI tool like many big tech platforms, but unlike these other tech platforms like ChatGPT, Bard is specifically programmed to produce really terrible results. We've seen this in a number of different studies we've done, but most recently with the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel, we thought, let's take a look. Let's see what Bard does, Google's very own artificial intelligence. And guess what? It doesn't tell you what Hamas is. And it's not even that it fails to call it a terrorist organization. It will say, it'll tell you that it does not have the capacity or capability to let you know what Hamas is. But Bard will let you know what the Irish Republican Army is, and Black Lives Matter, and Antifa, and any other sort of unsavory or terrorist organization. But Hamas, the only one of these organizations actually at war with Israel, suddenly Bard gets quiet. Let's say that you want to find out the capital of Israel. Now, anybody can do this and find the capital of Israel. It's Jerusalem. But if you look for the capital of Israel on Bard, again, it does not have the capability of answering that question. But Bard can tell you the capital of all 4 countries that border Israel. It can tell you the capital of Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan. It can tell you the capital of Uruguay and the capital of Sri Lanka. But for whatever reason, the only country on the planet that Bard is incapable of answering is the capital of Israel.
So why is this concerning, especially considering young people are growing up with this new technology and it's the technology of the future?
Yeah, well, there are 2 things to be concerned about. One is Google's evidence of anti-Semitism. Going back to 2013, Google refused to call its search engine that provides service to the Judea and Samaria. Some people call it the West Bank. They changed the name to Google Palestine. Google has a history. Its own former director of diversity, equity, and inclusion specifically said that Jews were warmongers, something like that. And Google had to take action against him fairly recently. So Google's growing anti-Semitism is bad. Separate from that, we have seen time and time again how Google has used its power, its resources, for a left-wing agenda. We did a study before the last Republican presidential debate looking for presidential campaign websites. And we looked for Republican presidential campaign websites and Democrat presidential campaign websites. Interestingly, when we looked for Democrat presidential campaign websites, Google would not tell us about RFK Jr., the single greatest threat to Biden's reelection. But it highlighted Joe Biden, put his campaign website at the very top. But here's what's really interesting. When we asked for Republican presidential campaign websites, Google gave us 2. Marianne Williamson, a Democrat, and then the Republican who was polling at 0% nationwide, Will Hurd. Those were the only two campaign websites that Google gave us. Not Donald Trump, not Nikki Haley, not Ron DeSantis, etc. Only Marianne Williamson and Will Hurd. They've taken advantage of the free market. They've taken advantage of the rule of law to make tons of money, and then they use that money against the rule of law, and they use that money against free market principles, against freedom. You know, this has to stop.
Very good points. Thank you so much, Dan Schneider. We appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.